Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is the Otherppl podcast, a weekly program featuring in-depth conversations with today's leading contemporary writers. I'm Brad Listi. I'm in Los Angeles. It's nice to be with you. I appreciate you tuning in, and I hope you're doing okay wherever you happen to be. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button wherever you listen. You can also subscribe on YouTube, and you can follow me on Blue Sky and Instagram. So today I'm going to be speaking with Chelsea Bieker about her novel Madwoman, now available in trade paperback from Back Bay Books. This is Chelsea's second time on the program, and she returns celebrating this novel of hers, which I would classify as a suspenseful page-turner about PTSD and generational trauma. So it's a little bit unexpected in its bearing. There aren't too many page-turners out there that I know of about PTSD, though I guess maybe you could call a lot of novels about maybe all novels are novels about PTSD on some level. But this one is acutely so. It's about a woman who is on the run from her past, but her past is catching up with her. I had such a nice time talking with Chelsea about all of the above. You're going to hear that conversation momentarily. A quick reminder about my weekly email newsletter. You can sign up over at bradlisti.substack.com. I would love it if you did. The newsletter's really easy. It's basically just me letting you know about the latest episodes of the show each week. I also share a list of links to things that I've been reading and finding interesting. So if that sounds good, go sign up at bradlisti.substack.com. And I also want to give a quick plug to my new company, DeepDive, which is now live. The debut course from DeepDive is called How to Write a Novel. It features more than 50 hours of never-before-heard conversations with dozens of today's most celebrated contemporary authors, people like Emily St. John Mandel, Melissa Broder, Stephen Graham Jones, Steve Almond, Vivi Ganeshananthan, Hannah Pittard, Lynn Steger-Strong, Deb Olin Unferth, Matt Bell, Matthew Salisis, Tiffany Clark Harrison, Madeline Lucas, Maya Binyam, Purchista Hakpur, Lauren Grodstein, Todd Goldberg, Gina Frangello. I'm listing these off the top of my head. There's more than 36 instructors in the course. Again, it's more than 50 hours long, and you can get it now at a special sale price for a limited time as DeepDive celebrates its launch. Check it out at www.deepdive.audio. You can stream the course online or via the DeepDive app. All links and info can be found at the website. So www.deepdive.audio. I hope you will get the course. There's never been a writing course quite like this one. Okay, so my guest once again is Chelsea Bieker, author of the novel Madwoman, available now in trade paperback from Back Bay Books. Chelsea Bieker's other books include the debut novel Godshot, which was longlisted for the Center for Fiction's first novel prize, as well as a story collection called Heartbroke, which won the California Book Award. Chelsea is the co-creator, along with Kimberly King Parsons, another friend of the show, of a company called The Fountain. It's a writing workshop, creativity, helper. How do I define this? Like if you're working on a book and you need some help and you want some structure and you want to dissolve the blocks that are sort of preventing you from doing your best work, you can check out The Fountain. And Chelsea also writes about creative practice at her substack, which is called Make Up Your Life. And I'm just so pleased to welcome her back onto this program for a second time. We had a great talk, and I'm happy to share it with you right now. So here we go. This is me talking with Chelsea Bieker, and her novel, once again, is called Madwoman.
I mean, all of my writing, I think, really is more concerned with getting at an emotional truth versus, the plot is what carries that for me. I like to use these sort of outsized plots to open up a world where I can get at that emotional truth. So while a lot of that truth is definitely things I've experienced or ways that I've felt, the plot is something different, right? Like the things that the characters are going through don't necessarily match up to what happened in my life. So it's an important distinction, but kind of a fun one. I think even with my first book, a lot of people, I got the feedback that they were like, oh, I thought maybe it was a memoir. And I was like, that's interesting to me. I mean, I guess maybe they're picking up on an intimacy in the writing or an exploration of a topic that feels very personal, which it certainly is to me. But then it is kind of funny because the plots of all my work are pretty wild. So it's disappointing probably to people that I haven't like survived a cult and been through the things in the books.
Well, I think that you hit on something that's interesting in the sense that this is a page turner. That's what I would call it. It's kind of a thrilling book, and it's suspenseful in the manner of like literary genre fiction, if I could call it that. But embedded within this very suspenseful story are very serious themes. I mean, this is a book about domestic violence. It's a book about generational trauma and what it's like to carry generational trauma and how that can impact a person in their day-to-day life, both psychologically and relationally. And then it's also, I think, a book that is at least speaking to like how to heal from domestic violence and generational trauma. So that's an interesting hybrid, like a suspense novel about PTSD, essentially.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely how I feel that I've experienced PTSD, where it's this weird feeling where you're just in a room. You know that logically you're safe, but there's a charge to memory that feels really dangerous. And I think at the outset of writing this, I wanted to capture that, and I didn't know if I'd be able to, but that was, if the book had a goal in some way on a writing level, that was it. It was, how do I make memory feel urgent? How do I make it feel dangerous on the page? Even though in many cases, this is a character who is just at her house, right? She's just with her kids. She's like nursing, she's going to the grocery store, but there is this tremor of fear that feels very in the now, even though it's coming from the past. So capturing that sense of, and I feel that that's how I've experienced trauma and PTSD. And that's kind of how it works, right? You're just sitting there. Anyone looking at you just sees a person like on a bench at a park, but you're somewhere really different and you're in even a place that feels dangerous. So trying to capture that was definitely my focus as a writer, I think.
How does PTSD manifest? Like you say, you're just sitting on a bench at a park. Like something will obviously trigger it. Is it usually like an external stimuli, or can it just be like an internal thought? Like you go into some spiral and suddenly it's manifesting physically?
Yeah, I think it shows up in a lot of different ways, but sure, it could be an external trigger. It could be something that reminds you of it. I think for me, it was like parenthood was the ultimate trigger in some ways, which was just the simple act of witnessing my kids sort of mill about a space that was really safe. And it was forcing me to compare that space to how I grew up. And it was just such the difference there felt like it was always highlighting the past for me, where I was like, oh, well, when I was 3, this was going on, or when I was 5, this happened. And seeing my kids move through their different phases and ages, it just invites that natural kind of reflection. And so in that sense, I think it can crack something open where it's like you could just be sitting there and then there's this crack that almost pulls you down into it. And obviously, like that's not a state that you might be in 100% of the time. But in the time of writing this book for me, I was in a period that felt very much like dominated by that feeling, where for whatever reason, I think certain hormonal things like weaning, for one, in the book, this is a character that is having sort of a hormonal breakdown after she stops breastfeeding, which can really happen. And certain imbalances, I think, can just invite more of that sort of that unprocessed trauma that lives in the brain that's trying to find resolution, right? It just kind of bubbles over. And that's how I felt like I experienced it. It was like I maybe thought I had processed a lot, or I thought I had kind of sealed certain things up. But then through parenthood, through the exhaustion, through that hormonal crash, it was like everything that was yet to be sort of resolved on that brain level was like, look at me, here I am. And I was like, this is really inopportune to be happening while I'm also in charge of this very small child. But that's kind of how it just worked for me. It was like just a calamity of those things coming together. And so I knew I wanted to write a book about motherhood, right? But also a book about motherhood when you're mothering from a childhood of trauma, which this character definitely is.
I have to believe, like on a personal level, that like when your children are at the same age or working through a period of years that coincides with the period of years that were toughest for you as a child, which I think was before the age of 10. I think at the age of 10, you went to live with your grandparents. I picked that up in my research, my exhaustive research.
I'm so impressed.
Yeah. But is that correct? I would just imagine that's the way it is. You're sitting there watching your kids go through, like you said, age 4, age 5, age 6, and it's calling to mind all of these memories. A question that arises for me is, as you begin to revisit some of this stuff, or it begins to revisit you, is any of it new? Like, do you suddenly find yourself grappling with memories that you didn't even realize you had? Or is it just like the old memories that won't leave you alone?
Oh no, like it's new. It's new stuff, which is awful. I mean, it's interesting because actually in the recent past, I've been working through it's almost like, is it a new memory or is it just a new understanding of something? Like, I think it's kind of a weird mixture of both. I know some people do experience really vivid recovered memory that they did not previously have. And for me, it's almost like I've experienced it as a sort of like a sharpening over time. So something that was probably always there, I might not have had words for in childhood, or then, you hit a new layer of life and you're like, oh, I'm understanding that in a different way. Or I think like the more we get our nervous system into a place of safety, maybe the more comes online because we can handle more. The brain is always trying to protect us, right? So it's like, we might not have the full picture until we're ready to deal with it. And so there's that, there's that element at play. And then for me, it's like there's certain memories that I know I couldn't have processed if my parents were still alive. Like certain things have come to light after they've died that I just think there was some suppression going on because I was having to maintain a living relationship with these people, right? And so in order to do that, there was just not this capacity to have maybe the full picture of something. And since they've passed away, they both died in the past 4 years, more has come online for me. And I also think because like my nervous system has been able to be the most at rest it's ever been in my entire life since they've died. So there's just like it's an ever evolving process. I think I know enough at this point to be like, I will never be able to say, I understand it all now. Like, I know that there's always more and there's always more to be revealed on the path.
You're never fully done. There's no terminus with like life and its various, especially the most difficult stuff. It's just, you got to learn how to carry it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm wondering, as a matter of curiosity, as you're raising children who are growing up in a much different environment than the one that you grew up in, and just for people listening, maybe we can clarify a little bit, like your parents both struggled with addiction, correct?
Yes.
And so that's what you were growing up with.
Yes. Addiction. There was a lot of domestic violence in the home, but I think addiction stemming from their own trauma, right? The book really I want to get at this idea that this is like a tumbleweed effect. This is not something that just started with the parents in the book. It's like, it goes beyond that and it goes beyond that and it goes beyond that. And that's how it works for all of us, right? We're always this product of what came before. But yes, on that level, addiction, a lot of unprocessed trauma. You know, my dad was a Vietnam veteran who had no resourcing after that. But even previous to that had experienced so much. And so just a lot of this sort of hotbed of like, they just weren't in that era of like therapy on Instagram, you know, like there was not words for these things. So it was a lot of this turmoil that just presented as violence. And so my curiosity about, okay, so I witnessed all this violence, right? And the violence has ceased now. I'm not witnessing violence anymore in my home. So where does it go? It's like, well, what happens to it? Like, I'm carrying it. I'm carrying the imprint of it. And so what does that mean? And it's just like this unraveling of, like you said in the beginning, you know, how does this show up in daily life? And I think if we're really honest with ourselves and our process, we know that it does show up. You know, it's not that it's just over and we survived it and we can move on. It's like there's work to be done around it. There's imprints that were made that created my worldview. There's all these different layers that I think my job is to not pass that on to my kids, but inevitably they are still going to be continuing that work themselves. Like I just know that too. So
yeah, I mean, that's kind of the question that I wanted to ask is, you're in a room with your kids, they're playing, they're happy, they're in this peaceful environment, you've created a stable home for them. None of the stuff that you had to deal with as a kid is visiting them. And you are, like you said, going through some sort of hormonal crash or period of your life after your parents have passed away where this stuff is kind of clarifying in your mind again. And you're seeing the disparity between your lived experience as a child and the lived experience of your children. Obviously, you're not like laying that on your kids, like, hey, kids, do you realize how good you have it? Like, you're not going to do that. And yet, I know this from my own experience from a different angle, you know, like my son being born with health issues, that's a big trauma. And yet I have a typical older child who kind of witnessed this as a child, you know, and it's like, what is she picking up? And my wife and I are like so sad and like trying to deal with it all, but we also want to make sure that we don't burden her with like some kind of unruly sadness. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
How do you navigate that? Because I think we're also like what you just said. I think I've had that same thought, like, well, it's going to get in there no matter what. There's no way to like bubble wrap her from this. She's obviously in the house. Like she's going to, and she's no fool. She's picking up on it one way or another, whether she has a vocabulary for what she's seeing and feeling or not. But I don't know. I don't know if there's a clean answer, but that part of it is interesting to me.
It is. And I think what's really encouraging is certainly that there's so much research that shows like if there's one safe person for even kids in the worst of circumstances, like they're going to have such better capacity at finding resilience, right? And so in the case of like our kids where, yeah, some of that might slip in, that's inevitable. I think they're so held in other ways that's just kind of the grist of life. It's like we can't protect them from their own journey. And I was just talking to my therapist about this actually, because like even in the best of circumstances, there's things that you worry that you're messing up in your kids or that you've done irreparable damage, you know, like just the shock of moving from one child to two and navigating the relationship with my first child in lieu of having a second one is not something I ever imagined would be hard, or no one ever talked to me about that. But it's had its own challenges, you know, and my therapist was like, you know, your children have their own path. Like everyone's going to have something that they're going to be processing or working through. And a lot of it is just, that is beyond our control. Like certain aspects of a personality will, you know, like there's all these layers, but I think that ultimate safety where it's like our kids know that they have somewhere to sleep, they will be fed, there won't be fighting, there, all those things, like they go a long way. So I do feel comforted by that.
Yeah. I mean, what I always say, because there is no way to perfect this process, you know, of parenthood. And when I look around, I think like if you are raising your kids in a household where they are loved and cared for and their basic needs are met, like that's really it's huge.
It's huge.
Not everybody has that. And I think that, when I look around at people who grew up without it, it's very impressive to me that you've been able to persevere through all this and, you're thriving. The verb thrive, I think, comes up in this book more than once.
Oh, yeah.
And we can talk about that. But people do manage to find their way through it with the help of maybe like a safe person.
Yeah.
I think your grandparents maybe played that role in your life, right? Didn't you move in with them when you were like 10 or something?
I did. And I accredit my grandparents, especially my grandmother, as basically the sole reason that I kind of made it out alive with some semblance of like who I was and what was possible. I mean, I don't know what would have happened if that intervention didn't happen. I think about that a lot. And I think my grandma just turned 100 and we did a big birthday party for her. And, in that it was like a lot of reflection about the immense thing that she did for me, which was basically take on a child to raise she was already in her 70s at that time. So it was this thing that she did for me that it does not, like a day doesn't go by that I think about the way that saved my life. So I do think that one safe person it can be the difference,
Imagine taking on a 10-year-old at age 70.
No. And my grandfather was like 80 and it's incredible, like we had our own struggles, but that what you're saying about just those baseline things being a routine, being something I could depend on was totally altering. So, and totally life-saving.
So the setup of your novel, there's some crossover, but as we've been talking about, there's also some plenty of deviation. But just to give listeners who haven't read the book yet some orientation, you've got a protagonist named Clove, whose, I believe, given name is Calla Lily. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
But she's kind of on the run from her past, and she has escaped into a new life. And that's kind of the suspenseful, driver of the narrative, is that she's kind of trying to outrun her past and realizing over the course of the book that that's not possible. And she grew up with parents, much like yourself, who struggle with addiction, and there's domestic violence. And her father, in particular, is really difficult to deal with. And he refers to what plagues him as the dark traveler. That's what Clove calls it. I think that's what he calls it too. Mm-hmm. There's some degree of self-awareness in him, that like, I'm a problem, which I find kind of heartbreaking, when somebody does know that they're not doing the right thing and yet they can't stop themselves. And as I was reading your novel, I was thinking about problem drinkers, like friends of mine who have struggled with addiction in the past. And in particular, the people who turn dark when they have a drink. It's not all that common, but I have seen it. And that's interesting to me. I think you were kind of speaking maybe to some of the reasons why a moment ago, when it comes to just carrying trauma generation to generation, having all of this unresolved trauma inside of ourselves. And then, alcohol does its thing and lowers one's inhibitions. And suddenly I think a person maybe is in confrontation with those feelings, and they manifest in ways that are not great. I guess I'd just like to hear you talk about your understanding of the dark traveler. Like, if I have too much to drink, I'm basically just like a really annoying, like, yellow lab. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm a happy drunk. I'm like, hey, but I mean, I'm sure it's not, it's not super great to be around, but unless you're also drunk. But like, I don't have that. And yet I've seen in my friends, they'll have like 2 drinks and all of a sudden you'll see kind of the light go out in their eyes. They'll start saying mean things or whatever it is. And it just gets weird. And what is that?
Gosh, that's such a good question. I think that, addiction is such a spectrum. Like, our response to alcohol, when we really think about like alcohol ingestion, it's kind of crazy. Like, it is a poison, right? And I think there's this interesting thing where it's like, oh, some people are alcoholics and some people aren't. Some people can handle it and some people can't. And that is true. But at the end of the day, like, we are all sort of trying to do this thing that we shouldn't really be doing. Like, we shouldn't actually be ingesting poison. And and what it does is I think when you have a bedrock of trauma, or you haven't been able to express certain things, it just puts you right in touch with that shadow self. It's like a super highway to the shadow or something. And I don't know. I don't have the answer why some people become the Labrador and some people become that biting, cutting, mean version of themselves. But I do think that it's this way in which a lid is just taken off of something, right? And then it's never enough. That's the other thing about it. It's like the allure that some sort of calming or satisfaction can come from it is just it's a fiction. It's not ever possible. I mean, it's a cycle. So the father in the book, the drinking is this. It is like a super highway to violence for him, and he is aware of it. There is a heartbreaking nature to his self-awareness around it. He does see himself as the problem. He does know that on some level, and yet it is like a possession. I think when I think of alcohol specifically, I think of possession, because we've all been with someone where we started out the night one way and you slowly see them leave. It's almost like they step off the stage and this other thing comes in, and you know they're not with you anymore. But yet what part of them is with us? I do think of it as like a shadow self, or like the hurt inner person, or the hurt inner child is just out to play in the only way they can. So it's just like this recurring tragedy that racks up more tragedy each time, right? Because each time the father gets drunk or blacks out, or, it's another round of violence. It's another round of something that will have to either be suppressed or healed. And when that's compounded, I think that's when you get into that like complex PTSD realm, when it's just like so many things. It's not like one thing. You're dealing with like a lifetime of things. So it is a bit different, but I don't know. I knew for myself that at a pretty young age, like alcohol was not going to be an option for me right away. I could see that I had that response. Like the alcohol would go in and I would leave, and a person would kind of step in that I really didn't like. But it's work, right? It would be work to confront that and heal that. And I'm so glad that I chose the path of that versus the other. I knew where it goes. Like, I think if there's one thing my parents really taught me, it's just that it's the dark place addiction can go. I think that remains a little abstract for people who haven't seen it. It is something that you almost need to see, because I think there's so many versions of what an alcoholic is for people, right? It's like, oh, it's the pink cheeked woman who had too much wine and is talking too much, or it's the dad that's sitting in the chair drinking a 6-pack every day but remains kind of still functioning at work. And then there's like the level of like total dysfunction, and that's the realm that I'm familiar in. I'm like, this isn't like a too much wine. This is like I'm homeless, like it's really fucked up. And then, I don't know. I want to go to those places because I think it's important. It's just important to shine that light on it, right? To just show it the way it is. And an alcoholic death is one of the worst things you've ever seen. Those are all the reasons like it keeps me in my lane, where I'm like, I don't have any fantasy about where it could go for me. I feel that dark traveler come in. So alcohol will never be an actual salve to that. It's only like a mirage, I think. And it is the way for the parents in the book too.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about it. It sort of tricks you. You're trying to kind of medicate this dark traveler, or this darkness within, or this pain or suffering, or whatever you want to call it. And then things get out of hand, and then you sober up. And then some part of you, like that part of you that has self-awareness, like the human part of you, feels ashamed. And then the shame is so painful that you want to anesthetize that shame. And that's kind of the insidiousness of it, the cycle, and how it perpetuates itself. And I got to say too, and I guess this is a nice place to segue to the health and wellness themes of your novel, is that I'm like kind of a recent non-drinker or almost non-drinker. Like I'll have a drink if I'm with people at a dinner or whatever and wine is served. Like I don't have a problem with that. But like I used to be, because I'm kind of tuned into health and wellness. I was like, oh, you got to have one glass of red wine every day for heart health. Well, that was bullshit. But of course, I'm so susceptible to this stuff that I was like, all right, and like, give me some Cabernet. Just, I feel like kind of a sucker, all of which is to say, I hear you when you're just like, yeah, why are we drinking poison?
Well, yeah, it is funny. It's like, yeah. And then the weird splitting off of like people who are good at it and people who aren't is also just wild, where it's like, yeah, I don't know if any of us are great at it. Like, I don't know what it's ever added to. I can't point to anything that alcohol has ever made better in anyone's life I know, just whether they have addiction or not. Like, it just seems like it's this third thing. It's like, it's either making your life kind of worse, or it's numbing something, or it's just neutral. Like, but I don't know if that it's ever like making things awesome in the way that is always hoped for, or the promise is, you know?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think it's like all you got to really do if you're listening to Chelsea right now and you're like, well, I don't know about that. I've had a lot of good times. Just stay sober one night and go out with a bunch of people
watch.
And watch. Like, people are obnoxious when they're drunk. Myself, everybody. Yeah. You just talk louder and you're not making sense. And like, yeah, you're having some kind of good time, but you're not really fully conscious for it. And then you get the flu afterwards, especially as you get older.
There's no reward, really. And I know it's not maybe a popular take, and I can feel the eye rolls resounding as I talk.
All of my drunk listeners are very angry right now.
But I mean, I don't know. I always encourage everyone to evaluate, what are they getting out of it? You know, there's always something we're getting from things.
So health and wellness, which Clove is very into, for reasons that are kind of touching, also kind of recognizable, also kind of annoying and infuriating. This entire space drives me up the wall, and I have complained about it for years now on this show. That might even be the reason why I podcast, just so I can complain about the endless ads that are health and wellness related that populate my Instagram feed and torture me. Because I take it seriously. They're like brain worms. I'm like, do I need to start rubbing beef tallow on my face? Like, it's bonkers. And so Clove, for people listening, I think one of her happy places is a grocery store, especially like a luxury grocery where there's like a really well-populated supplements aisle, you know, like a Whole Foodsy type place. And I think that's like I want to talk about why we are drawn to this stuff. I think control is part of it. Maybe vanity is part of it. But in the case of Clove, I think there's a sweet aspect to it where she's kind of like remothering. Is it called remothering or reparenting? Mm-hmm. She's taking care of herself. She wants to be well, and she wants to thrive. That's the Goop approved verb, right? Thrive. We're not just living, we're thriving.
That's right.
And I just love to hear you talk about that choice, because I think it's a really interesting choice. It adds real depth and complexity to her character, and it makes a real psychological and emotional sense. And it also kind of speaks to the zeitgeist, because I think most of us, especially people of a certain age, you're much younger than I am, but like you're in your 30s, right?
Oh, deeply in.
Yeah.
Deeply in my, yeah.
So yeah, like all of a sudden that supplement aisle starts calling to you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I really wanted this to be a part of the book. I love writing a novel because sort of just like everything falls in when you're in the space of where you're kind of like, you're living into some of these obsessions yourself. And for me, I was like, where can I put this? Where can I put this time that I've spent enraptured by this wellness sort of like tundra? Like, where can it all go? And of course, it's this character. It's like, it's part and parcel to her mental landscape and how she perceives safety, right? It's part of that picture of safety for her. And when I moved to San Francisco as a young person, like in my very early 20s, it was kind of the first time I was out on my own. Well, not the first time, but I felt acutely that I was entering adulthood. I was like, I am an adult now, and it's time to figure out who I want to be. Like, it just felt like the world opened up a little bit, and I was like, I want to try some stuff. And this was this time of my life. I'd been raised pretty religiously, but that had fallen away. And I think that I'm always seeking deeper self-understanding, deeper understanding of the universe, of our spirits, whatever. Like, I'm just attracted to all this shit is what I mean to say. And
I want to say you have an energy healer. I read that in prep.
Yeah,
you have an
absolutely.
energy. So you live in Portland and you have an energy healer. So that's just, I think that
yeah.
places you in a certain spot on the spiritual spectrum.
Yeah. I think we should just have front loaded that probably for the episode.
I'll mention it in the intro.
Straight West Coast over here.
Yeah.
I've just always been open to things because as a person that desperately wants to do things differently, you become open to solution. You're like, I'll try that. Does it mean it will give me relief from my psychic pain? I'll try it. Like, I've always been like that. And, in San Francisco at that time of my life, it was really formative. I started doing yoga. I started being in my body again. I think that was something I had really departed from. And in that, I stumbled into a grocery store that was unlike the Food Max I'd grown up in. It was like, what is this place? This is not a grocery store as I understand them to be. This is like a whole other thing. This is like a community. And at the one that I sort of fictionalize in the book, but it was similar in the sense there was like a community board for all of these esoteric classes you could find or groups, and there was books, and it was a way of life that I was kind of witnessing that had always been existing, but I just didn't know about. And I'm just a curious person, and I wanted to know more. And I think it was like that foray of, and at the time I had a lot of, I think, trauma related health issues, like always had migraine headaches, always had a lot of neck and back tension, like, which are just holding patterns from childhood, right? Like just ways that I survived that show up as an adult now that are a nuisance, and always wanting to kind of think like, well, can I fix that? Or how can I optimize? It becomes like not so much just can I be healthy, but can I be like optimized? Can I be beyond healthy? Is this possible?
Yeah, it drives me. I feel like, okay, the only thing I would say there, and I think that I have complicated feelings about all this because
for sure,
I think there's a lot of good in wanting to be healthy.
Sure. On the outset, there's like nothing wrong with that, right? But then the deeper you go, and now as a 38-year-old, at the time I was just like first encountering this. I was like, oh, so the solution is magnesium and this and that, and then you slowly witness the solutions change, and you're like, oh no, it's just like a capitalist cycle of its own.
Right.
Like actually, like, oh, right now it's like all about protein, but guess what, guys? It's about to be about fiber. So just hold on to your seats. It's going to change, and it always is changing. But you don't really know that when you step into it. So it just feels like, oh my God, this is like maybe the mecca of all of the solution to all my problems. And surely, right, there's some element of truth where it's like, yeah, I mean, if you are vitamin D deficient, you're going to feel like shit. So start taking vitamin D. But there's an end to the ways in which this fixes the deeper issues, which is what the book's about. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a volcano. It's like, maybe if there's a new moon juice supplement can really deliver me out of my out of this psychic trauma, like I'll try it. But ultimately, of course, there's not. Of course, it's ultimately about facing the self, and it always will be. And that costs, well, that might cost the money of a therapist, but in the end, it's you meeting yourself. And there's not a supplement in the world that's gonna really like make that happen without you showing up for it. So
there's nothing you can do to defeat time.
There's nothing you can do to defeat time.
Yeah. I mean, people trying to stay young, like looking young when they're in their 70s and 80s, that is the most deeply sad thing to me.
It's wild. It is wildly sad because it's like, I mean, that seems like a different conversation in some ways with like the more aesthetic procedures or things like that. But I think this is a character, like you said, that I wanted it to be an evaluation of this industry in some ways. Like we're witnessing it in real time, how it has kind of like captured her. But at the same time, it is a remothering. Like there is a sweetness to it, like you said. And I'm glad you picked up on that, because I think for her, it feels like the opposite to something. I think I was always like looking for the opposites too. Like, well, what's the opposite of being in poverty and fearing for my life? Well, I don't know. This grocery store feels like the opposite of that. Like, and it's this safer place that feels kind of like maybe there's some nurturing here, and that's coming from a very real place in her. But of course, like she's going into massive debt achieving that. Like there's a dark side too. It's just switching, like I love to say, it's like switching seats on the Titanic in a way.
Yeah, the compulsive shopping is another thing. I mean, not just in grocery stores, but like the obsession with like, what is it, like fair trade, organic cotton clothing, and just shopping, just trying to kind of like anesthetize the pain of being alive by buying shit, which I think it's like consuming, whether you're eating it or you're wearing it or, swiping your credit card on the internet. Like, I think that's very common.
And you're kind of roped in. I think like in the time in which I became a mother, which was 11 years ago, this was at the dawning of the influencer age. Like Instagram looked much different back then, but it was still kicking up. There were starting to be these mom influencers on there that were painting these beautiful pictures of pregnancy and early motherhood. And often there were products involved in that you would, and I was I felt like I just didn't know anything. I felt like I didn't have a mom to tell me what to buy. I had the internet. I had internet mom blogs to tell me what is the best crib, what is the you're depending on these sources because that is what you have. And also like being right at the cusp of that influencer culture taking hold, it's like you're kind of not totally tuned into the fact that maybe they're getting paid for these things or there's endorsements involved. You're just seeing this beautiful life. And I certainly felt like, okay, if I can harness that or if I can figure out how to create that, everything will be fine. And I think a lot of us do that even subconsciously. Like maybe now we're more conscious of how Instagram is working on our brains. But at the time I felt like if I follow these moms and do what they're doing, that's going to be a better shot than I had.
And it worked out.
So I better get that organic blanket and I better get it right now. Did it work out? I mean, I think it worked out in the sense that I ultimately had to be arrived at a place where I would have to just trust my own instincts, right? It's like the full circle is eventually that you're just going to end up facing yourself again, no matter how many like eco wool sweaters you have from Spain. I mean, they are nice though. So it's like, you can just have nice things. I think sometimes there's also that it's like, it's a self-worth thing in some ways. Like, do you get to have nice things? Do you get to feel comfortable? Do you get to feel cared for? It's like nothing's wrong with that. But knowing, I don't know, like where's the line where it becomes problematic? Well, the character in this book like has crossed that line, I would say, where it is wreaking some havoc on her life.
It's a big question. I don't have the answer, but it's a big question for me, like how our patterns of consumption should be modulated in response to like gross inequality, ecological collapse. And then also just like, if we're hoping to be happy people, like deeply happy people, not superficially happy people, how should we be behaving as consumers? And I am nagged by the suspicion that life would look radically different if we actually did what we probably should in that respect.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what it would mean. We'd probably be living in smaller houses or just living a more austere life. And I think people don't like to hear that. They want their shit. They want their Amazon Prime, shit.
Yeah. And in the book, I wanted to really kind of corner in on not just like consumerist stuff, but But also the greenwashing, like the lie that the purchase is beneficial or the purchase is, supporting a small business, or like everything she's buying is wrapped up in this sort of ethos of being regenerative or, not harming the planet. But the consumerism of it is still too much. Like it's still, it becomes its own little world unto itself. And it's just the psychology of like, it doesn't even matter what she would be buying. It's that she needs something to fill that hole or create a semblance of normalcy for herself.
Well, there's a character in the like grocery store section of the book who I loved. She's not a major character. She's called the Glowing Woman.
Yes.
Is that right? And
yeah.
So Clove is kind of finding refuge in this grocery store. It's like the opposite, as you're saying, of what she kind of grew up with. And she senses that there's something benevolent there and that she wants to move toward that. And she feels nurtured there, that there's some kind of care there. And then there's a woman who comes into the store who she thinks of as the Glowing Woman, who is kind of the embodiment of sort of everything that she aspirationally wants to be or instinctively wants to be. She's sort of beautiful, calm, has great skin, seems well dressed, can just sort of casually throw whatever she wants into her cart. It's clear that she's not paying attention to the price of anything. She's a recognizable figure, especially I think as a Californian. I mean, you're in Portland, it's the same shit, but like I did a lot of yoga in my life, especially like in my 20s and early 30s. I was like a 6-day-a-week yoga person, which my wife is sort of like, ew, how did I wind up with you? But I had a bad back. That's how I got started. And I just started to really like it, and it felt good. But I got to know a lot of yoga people. And the Glowing Woman is a recognizable figure to anybody who's done like more than 3 yoga classes. She is usually beautiful. She's got the cool yoga gear. I don't know what that would be these days. What's the brand? Do you know? Is there like a brand of yoga gear that...
Well, you know what? Let me tell you that we're moving away from synthetics and we're going into organic cotton yoga wear. So all your Lululemon, your brands that were popular are out.
Because it's bad for your skin, or what is it? Is it
bad? Because it's just putting all these little microplastics and forever chemicals right into your bloodstream through your body's largest organ. It's shit like that is crazy, because you're like, oh, here I'm just trying to do this yoga that's regulating my nervous system. Meanwhile, I have on this suit of hell on my skin. So just to note, we're moving away from that, everybody.
Yeah, it makes me so angry. It's like we just can't escape. Like, so there I was in yoga in my 20s, and like in Los Angeles, and just kind of surrounded by glowing women. You can imagine, like, there's lots of glowing women walking around yoga studios in LA. But as I was reading your book and I saw that term, and I was sort of laughing to myself, I started to think about like what the ideal would be for a man. Like, what's the analog on the masculine side of things for the glowing woman? I want to try to figure it out. Maybe you have like a very clear idea, but I'll give you my thoughts and then you can respond.
Okay.
I think there is some analog, the super healthy bro, but that's kind of like the cheesy version. It's like the bro with the abs at the gym who's like tan and he's rubbing beef tallow on himself or whatever it is, and like he's doing kettlebell swings, and like it's the Instagram bro that, like, I hope you've never had to bear witness to, but I am served these ads endlessly. That's not necessarily what I would think of as the masculine ideal, or like the glowing woman equivalent. I think it's some combination of like a guy who's gray, but still has like that great skin and young, and he's usually got like a beard. And then I think too, and he exudes this wealth and confidence. He's clearly loaded. He's figured out like how to make lots of money. And then often I feel like he has longer hair into his old age, which is a sign that A, he still has his hair and it's healthy. And then B, he's rich enough that he doesn't have to give a fuck. He's like, I got long hair. And it just made me think. I remember observing like when David Letterman retired and Jon Stewart retired, they grew beards. Do you remember that? It was like, this is a sign that like, I don't have to give a fuck. And nothing against those guys. I just think they're prominent examples, but I think there's something about being old, like letting your hair grow long and having a beard, but also still being like handsome and somehow youthful. Like Brad Pitt's kind of he's been doing some version of this for a long time. Jeff Bridges sort of embodies it, though he's not in good enough shape to fully embody what we're talking about. To his credit, he's not like ripped at 70, which is weird. But do you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that's what it would be. Maybe you have a different thought about, and what would we call this guy? The glowing man, I guess.
The glowing man. I mean, I think that there is a moment in the book where she notices the men in the grocery store in San Francisco, and they kind of have like, they are in these like hemp shirts that are just slightly distressed, but like they are meant to be that way. You know, like there's an illusion of like someone who's in touch with nature. I don't know. It's not necessarily an illusion. It's just, there's a couple bracelets, maybe a crystal bracelet, maybe some little threaded entwine, you know, but it all looks like very good together. Like there's Tevas. There's like expensive outdoor wear happening, you know?
Yeah.
But there's also the sense like this person knows how to camp. Like they know how to set up a tent, but also there's money.
Yeah, but they get to the camp spot in a Rivian SUV.
Exactly.
That they bought this year.
Yes.
Cash.
Right. And there's like, you know, there's a spirituality, or there's a sense of having been awakened to something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's part of it. That's a part of it at yoga. Is always like there's some sort of like really pronounced eye contact and like performative calm happening.
Yeah, a little like they've had some sun, but it looks good.
Yeah. I want to talk about more guy stuff, if I may, even though this is a book that is centered around a woman's life. I have to flag the fact that the two main dudes in your book are not problematic. They're nice guys. That is a rarity. And I notice it because so many times I'm like, oh, here comes the guy. It's just like, it's almost inevitable. It's like, oh, what's he going to do? You know, and these guys that you drew are, you know, they're rich. They're not flat characters that are just like happy, like golden retriever dudes. Like they're nice guys. And there are nice, decent men in the world. And every once in a while they show up in fiction. And I would just love to hear you talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, I really wanted to paint a marriage that was a pretty good marriage. Like she does find a husband that is really different from her father, and she is building a life that is really supported and safe. And every marriage has its sticking points, but hers is actually pretty functional. And if anything, like she's kind of the problem in the marriage. And I think that was important. I think as an artist, it's like, I want to have a range. Every book I want to challenge myself to do something I haven't done before. And my first two books, I don't think there is really many good guys in those books. Like they don't exist in those books, and for good reason. That wasn't the goal of those books. But, you know, with this one, to paint this fuller picture, to really show the dynamic nature of her life and the way she's encountered male relationships, I think it was important that she would have counter experiences to the traumatic viewing of her father. And she's very intentionally going out in the world to find the opposites. Like we keep using this word opposite. I think it comes up in the book so much. It's like she knows she's learned a lot by watching her dad, and she knows how to kind of gear her sights toward something really different. And I think there's also the prevailing kind of cliche, and it's a cliche because it's often true and for good reason, that, you know, a lot of like I remember growing up and my mom was always really afraid I would just marry my dad. Like I would just find a guy just like my dad. And I found that, like, I don't know if you've heard that before. It's like, oh, you just end up marrying your father. And I was like, no, Like, I will absolutely not be doing that. Like, and sometimes you enter relationships, you don't even know enough at the beginning or whatever. Like, all kinds of things can happen. But I think this is a character who is really taking a measured and intentional sort of step into the world of romance and dating, and in a way that she's trying to avoid that. So the characters that, we get to see in the book, I wanted to see her first love. I wanted to see her fall in love for the first time. I wanted the character to not be completely only defined by this trauma. Like, in some ways, this is also a coming of age story about setting off on one's own, falling in love. Like this, she falls in love in San Francisco with a good guy, like a guy that really loves her, the butcher. And they have a really special relationship. And it's also a relationship that's pretty different from the relationship she later has with her husband, and they're both men that in the end want what's best for her and are going to support her. And it was, as like a writer, it's like, how do I render that on the page? Like, I can render like a bad guy on the page. So let's try to do this other like really dynamic thing of showing all of these different formations of relationship. So
I have to flag too with the butcher. This is her first love when she's just like setting out on her own. And he's kind of like this sort of sexy dude, right? He's like, it's like the more physical of the relationships, if I could characterize it that way or something. There's more like, it's more like animal compared to like the later marriage, which is more stable and maybe emotionally deep or whatever. And I have noticed in a lot of books that when there is like this kind of hot guy in a book, he's often like a chef. Or he's got something to do with like food, and like the butcher's dealing with meat. And I was just like,
yeah,
I see that over and over again. I guess there's something very sensual about a dude, but I was like, man, I should have learned how to cook. Do you notice that or no?
That's so funny. Well, it's funny because a lot of readers have said they felt like the butcher character was Jeremy Allen White in The Bear.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah.
Yeah, that guy's like, women love that guy, right?
Something hot about that. I mean, yeah, I think that for this story, I was drawing a lot, just geographically from the places I've lived. And I just had this really crystal memory of this little corner store where I lived in San Francisco. And I changed it a lot and I made it into this other place, but it was this like really tiny, sweet little kind of grocery deli place. And I knew she was already there. And so having him work there was like a natural choice for the book. And it was really fun to paint that. But I think you're onto something, that there's probably a subconscious thing going on with like food prep, nurturing, like having a man in that role is kind of inherently hot. So good job. You nailed it.
So there's something else I want to talk about that figures greatly into your book, and that is the secret of Clove's past. She's running away from it. She has kept this secret. I hope I'm not spoiling too much by saying that she has kept this secret from her husband. She has never really told him what happened to her as a child and the way in which the really dark period ended. I don't want to give away too much.
You're doing good.
Okay. But she's never told her husband this.
Yeah.
That part of her life, I think, was the part that I felt most acutely as I was reading, because I was like, oh, like even going through all of the abuse, like that is obviously awful and, wouldn't wish it on anybody. But to have to carry a secret like that with your spouse would be enormously taxing for me. Carrying the weight of a secret like that is super psychologically difficult. And I think you render that. Like, we're kind of seeing her. She's been doing it for a while, but we're meeting Clove in this story as she starts to kind of buckle under the weight of that secret.
Yeah. There's a line early in the book where she says something like, she's kind of explaining that she's kept this entire past a secret from her husband. And she says, at the time, I didn't yet know the cost of this. And I think it is that sense that we are meeting her in this moment where she is feeling that cost. Like, as a young woman, she perhaps thought this would be an easy fix. This will be easier. And of course, that's not true. It's much harder. And yet the reason that she does this is because she doesn't want to live under this definition. The sort of exhaustive nature of trauma at times can feel like you're carrying around this fucking suitcase all the time. It's like a heavy ass suitcase. And you're like, okay, here I'm meeting this new person. Do I need to like open up the suitcase? And now it's time. And it's like, what if I think I held a personal fantasy of just like, what if I could just not do that? Like, what would it be like to really be like, that's not me. That's not my story anymore. And this book was a experiment almost in like figuring out, well, what would it have looked like if I just had gone to San Francisco and been like, you know what? I'm never going to talk about this again. Like, this is over. And I couldn't imagine doing that. Like, there's no way in hell. I'm like you. I'm like, if I'm thinking or feeling one thing, it's like right on my face.
Right.
Impossible to hide. And yet I was really transfixed by the fantasy of it because it can feel like a burden, right? It's like when you're carrying all of this stuff that is mainly enacted by your parents or caregivers, it's like, well, I didn't choose that. What if I could just choose differently? So it's coming from just a fantasy place. And then, yeah, the cost of that, it's like a prohibitive to intimacy. It's a prohibitive to everything he says is loaded in a way that he doesn't know, right? There's a moment where they're having a fight and she's like, you're just a woman hating, like she just blows up and he has no idea where it's coming from. He'll never be able to trace where that thread comes from. And ultimately she's unknowable to him and she knows it's her own doing. And so that becomes its own burden that's like heavier than the original burden. And yeah, it like everything in the book, it's this turning over. She's going to have to face it all. And I knew that was where we were going to travel in the narrative, right? It's like, that's ultimately, I think I wanted it to mimic the experience that I've had over and over, where it's like, until I face that darkest memory, that darkest thought, that darkest feeling, it is not going to move. Like, it's always about a facing and an embracing even of whatever that is. And until she can do that, there's not going to be true intimacy or actually the life she really does want. But yet I understand her impulse to want to just move away from it.
As Jane would say, we didn't even get into Jane. It's Jane, right?
Yeah.
She's the best friend that they have, this kind of like breakneck friendship, kind of like comes on fast and really strong. But as she would say, the only way through is through, right?
Yeah.
And I guess like a good place to close, since we've been talking about like what PTSD and generational trauma and all of this stuff is just like on a note of like healing. And I ask this question a lot when it comes to books that deal in these themes about whether or not the author has experienced any kind of lightening, because I do think, however fictive the book is, I think there is something happening here where you're facing, this is a way through to really think deeply and be in these kinds of experiences and narratives and to kind of recreate them and look at them closely. I've done some version of that. I found it incredibly healing and lightening. It's not like a magical elixir. There's no, like we said at the top, like there's no end. You don't reach the end and the finish line and nobody hands you a trophy. Unless I guess you win some sort of literary award, in which case maybe you get a trophy, but not a healing trophy. But I'd just love to hear your thoughts on that. Like, do you find art making to be cathartic or healing? And has it helped you deal with the darker aspects of your past?
Yes. Yes. I have the sense with writing that my relationship to it is one of life and death. Like, not to get too dramatic, but I think that it has been a companion for me my whole life. It's this steadfast thing to me that I've had the longest relationship with of anything. And it is always there. And it can always carry whatever I need to look at. And I know that. And it's sort of this living, breathing relationship that is ongoing. And I think this book particularly needed to show me the truth of violence, like the truth of my own childhood in some ways that had been told a different way to me. And this was a bit of a retelling, and a bit of, it felt a little vindicating, honestly. It felt a little bit redemptive for me to tell this story. And then also knowing that what a novel does is, I think it just opens the next door. So now I'm walking through a new door that I couldn't have walked through if I hadn't have written this book. Now I'm writing this next book. It's like, but I'm writing it with the tools that I learned from this journey. And there was healing within that, but it's also it is this ongoing relationship. So going into this next door, it's like, okay, well, let's turn over some of these other things. Let's turn over the story you've told about this, or let's go deeper into this bigger. It's almost now I have a sense that I'm unbraiding myself in a real way from a lot of these things that I think in the beginning of my writing, it was like a clutching. It was like a clutching tightly to, and now it's a releasing. And that probably sounds too vague, but I think the art is always just completely entwined in the experience of healing. For me, it's like it's not like, oh, write a book and then be healed. No, like I'm doing a lot of other really targeted things on the side in order to be functional enough to write the book. But the discoveries made in the work are undeniably a huge part of that process. And to me, it's the closest to God. That is the spiritual act, is the writing. So I love it. I mean, I think there's so much noise around writing. There's so much noise around a publication, around how to get published, like how to find an agent, like all of this stuff that is like great busy work for us writers. But then if we don't stay in touch with that really primary soul of why we want to do this thing in the first place, like we get in trouble. So I think every day it's like, how do I feed the relationship I have with whatever that thing is I'm working with when I'm working on the page?
So this next door that you're walking through, you're working on another book?
Yes.
Can you give like some broad strokes, just like some hints about what kind of story you might be telling?
Yeah. So it's still a Chelsea Bieker story in the sense that we're still looking at mother loss. We're still looking at mother-daughter fractures. It's from a different angle this time. I think on just a more craft level, I really knew I wanted to write multiple perspectives. I wanted to write a neighborhood book. I wanted it to be kind of wild, dramatic, like, and also like deeply heartfelt. But essentially it's this intersection of these three women. I wanted to explore custody in this book. You know, what does it mean to lose custody? What does it mean to gain custody? The child that's kind of trapped in the middle of that. And also, it explores a murder. I think this is a book that I've been trying to write for a really long time. I have lots of evidence of me dancing around it. And I think I'm finally at the time where I can now write it. So in that way, I feel really good writing it. It definitely feels like it's teaching me what to do. Like it's been a real process. So, and I'm very much still in that process. So it's hard to say how it will all turn out, but wish me luck.
Yeah. Best of luck. Does it have a working title or a title at all?
No. I mean, I have some ideas, but I feel like Madwoman always was called Madwoman to me. And that was so nice. And
it's a good title.
Yeah, it was just, that was the title, and it stayed the title, and it was very clean like that. And this feels, I'm still not sure. And I don't know. I do ask often for it to be revealed to me because I love having a title. I have some working titles, but nothing that I feel comfortable or good about like saying because I don't feel confident about them yet. But I think I'll know it when I know it.
That's usually the way that it goes. Well,
yeah.
I wish you luck with it. And I thank you for taking the time to talk with me. Congratulations on Madwoman and its paperback release. And I wish you well. You look well. Your skin looks great.
Brad, you look well too. It's so good to talk to you. And I can't believe it's been 5 years since we last talked. We talked in 2020 at the height of the pandemic. And we talked about crystals. And look at us now. So I'm so grateful for the work you do. And I love your podcast. So glad to be here.
Okay, there we go. That was Chelsea Bieker talking with me about Madwoman, her latest novel, available now in trade paperback from Back Bay Books. A delightful conversation. Just loved it. Very nice to have Chelsea Bieker back here on the show. You can find her on Substack at chelseabieker.substack.com. She's on Instagram at Chelsea Bieker. And check out The Fountain. The website is www.fountainpractice.com if you need some help with your writing. Chelsea and Kimberly King Parsons are excellent resources. So check that out. And I'm sure she has a website. I think it's chelseabieker.com. I'm just going to guess. There's no way she doesn't have a website, right? There's no way. Let me see here. I'm going to look. chelseabieker.com. Yes, indeed. There it is. chelseabieker.com is the official website. So go get her book. It's out there in paperback. It's called Madwoman, available from Back Bay Books. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for this program wherever you listen. You can also subscribe on YouTube, and you can follow me on Blue Sky and Instagram. Sign up for my weekly email newsletter over at bradlisti.substack.com. And if you love this show, if you listen regularly and you get something from the work that I do, you can support this program over at patreon.com/otherpplpod. I would be much obliged. If you want to join my book club or get an Other People t-shirt or an Other People sweatshirt, you can do all of that stuff at the show's official website, otherppl.com. And be sure to check out my new company. It's called DeepDive. And the debut course from DeepDive is called How to Write a Novel. It is available right now. Check it out at www.deepdive.audio. Last but not least, if you have a minute and you want to do me a quick favor, please give this show a rating. Wherever you listen, rate it, review it, say nice things. It helps the show find new listeners. Okay, so coming up on Thursday, there should be a brand new episode of Brad and Mira for The Culture, this podcast's weekly pop culture assessment. I will be joined, as always, by my friend and co-host, Mira Gonzalez. Assuming nothing chaotic and unexpected happens in Mira's life that precludes us from being able to record, as anybody who listens to that program on a regular basis knows, Mira is unpredictable. She is exceedingly chaotic, and anything could happen at any time. So every week is suspenseful. And I'm just going to have to leave things there. I think there will be a new episode of Brad and Mira for The Culture on Thursday, but it's TBD. So stay tuned.